Hi everyone. How you doing? How's it been going this week? Can't believe we're in August and we're still doing this. I'm really struggling about it really. Can't wait for us all to be together again. And it feels like we're taking a little bit of a step backwards, and it's hard, isn't it, not to feel a bit low about it all. So I hope what I say today will help a little bit. And we're finishing our series, Get Out of Your Head, today. And I just want to kind of round it all up, if I can. At school, okay, I was a good student. Believe it or not, yes, I was a model student. You can ask any of my old school friends, Piercy, Cindy, Kay, We met recently again on Facebook, with the wonders of Facebook. And we were generally well behaved, as befitting an all-girls grammar school. We wore our bottle green skirt, just 2 inches above the knee, because they would be measured. We wore our bottle green blazer, our bottle green ties, our bottle green school hat, and bottle green knickers with pride. Our headmistress, the formidable Miss Dunn, would stand before us every morning during assembly, adorned in a menacing black teacher's gown and a matching raven black hair, very short, very stern, and she would proceed to tell us in no uncertain terms that wherever we went, we represented the school. And our behaviour must be exemplary. Yes, especially on the buses. That was very important. She frightened the pants off me. Literally, the bottle green pants frightened the pants off me. I'll not lie. And I'm still not sure, if she wasn't one of the walking dead. And if you were called to her office, it was like walking the Green Mile. It was like the Hunger Games and you were the tribute. When you had mustered enough courage to knock on the door, you were greeted with a red light or a green light. And I can still remember fixating on those lights. And when it turned green, I felt like passing out. The woman knew how to put the fear of God into you. And for years, I had always thought of God like a strict headmaster. He glowered over me and was waiting to dish out punishments when I did anything wrong. To me, God was like Miss Dunn. It's no wonder I was a good student. Except for RE. Funnily enough, religious education. For some reason in RE, I messed around. The teacher, was an old guy who, unlike Miss Dunn, had no control over us. So much so that when it came to taking my O-levels, I found that I had no notes. So I thought, what am I going to do? I best go downtown and buy me a Bible. And which is what I did. I went down into Plymouth and into the town there, and I bought the paperback Good News for Modern Man. And guys, that's when I fell in love with Jesus. God with skin on. He wasn't like Miss Dunn at all. And I want to invite you to do the same. Read the Gospels and you will never find more wisdom, more grace, or more love. You will find a man like no other man. He spoke out vehemently against the controlling and unloving religious leaders, and he befriended the outcasts, the poor, the tax collectors, the prostitutes, the lepers. He was called friend of sinners, and people flocked to him. He had women friends and followers. That was unheard of in those days. And some, yes, they said he was a devil. Others were jealous and wanted to kill him. But this guy, he healed the sick and he set free those who were bound. He walked on water and spoke to the storm. He turned water into wine. What a guy. And no one has improved on the things he said. Things like, love your enemy. The first shall be last and the last shall be first. Let he who is without sin cast the first stone. He took all the commandments and made them into two. Love God, love one another. This man claimed to be God. What do you do with a man who says he is God? C.S. Lewis says he has to be either bad, mad, or who he says he is. There's your three choices. Jesus asked his disciples, who do you say that I am? And he's asking you that question today. Jesus, God with skin on, the God who came to find us, to show us God's face and to become the sacrifice to end all sacrifices. Well, I'd like to say that I became a Christian there and then. But though I believe I met with Jesus, I was way too full of myself. And to give Jesus the credit, he pursued me for another 15 years before I surrendered my life to him. Now, I talk a lot about Jesus being God with skin on. But today I want to talk about you and me. When we surrender our lives to Christ and follow him, something wondrous happens and Jesus comes to live within us. We are filled with the Holy Spirit. Have you been baptized in the Holy Spirit? Do you know that knower inside of you, that knower that tells you that you're a child of God? Do you have that inner voice that guides and convicts you? Paul was able to write, "It is not I who lives, but Christ in me." So the question I want to ask all of us today is this. Do people look at you, they look at me, and see Jesus with skin on? Jesus with skin on. Do they say, hey, here comes Jesus wrapped in aid? Or here comes Jesus wrapped in Kate. Here comes Jesus wrapped in Ken. The thing is, the degree to which Jesus can live in you depends upon how much of you is still battling for control. There's a great story I always tell about a Native American who, when he became a Christian, he felt like there were two wolves inside him. And they were fighting all the time. And he asked the missionary guy what was going on. And the guy said, which dog wins? And which wolf wins? And the Native American said, well, it's the one I feed the most. And basically, those two wolves, okay, are ourselves and God's Spirit. They're fighting for control all the time. And the one who wins is the one we feed the most. I want to remind everyone today, if you have given yourself to Christ, you are the light. God is in you. You live in the darkness and may sometimes act like the darkness, but you will never be the darkness, and you will never be at home in the darkness. You, my friends, are a new creation. You are his child. Galatians 4:47 says this, but when the right time came, God sent his son, born of a woman, subject to the law. God sent him to buy freedom for us who were slaves to the law, so that he could adopt us as his very own children. And because we are his children, God has sent the Spirit of his Son into our hearts, prompting us all to cry out, Abba, Father. Now you are no longer a slave, but God's own child. And since you are his child, God has made you his heir. And here's the thing, as God's children filled with the Holy Spirit, we have the mind of Christ. And the question is, are we using it to think the thoughts that Jesus may think? Which thoughts are winning, Christ's or ours? Are we training our minds daily to think like him? Do you remember those old bracelets people used to wear? WWJD, what would Jesus do? Maybe we need, what would Jesus do? WWJD stroke T, what would Jesus think? For example, when times are overwhelming, do we choose to get alone with God and be still, just as Jesus did with the Father? Do we, like Jesus and his disciples, stay together in community rather than isolating ourselves? Do we choose to stop living afraid and trust the goodness of God? Do we, like Jesus, choose to delight in God and the people around us? Do we choose, like Jesus, to be grateful no matter what life brings at us? And because Jesus lives in us, do we choose to get out into a broken world and do something? All of us have the ability to do something, to be God's hands and feet. Jesus chose these things and we can too. And the more we discipline ourselves to think like Jesus, the easier it becomes. It's like a path in the woods. A path starts by flattening the grass and leaves with our feet. And soon it becomes hardened. And as it's used more and more, nothing starts to grow on it. The ground is too hard and the path becomes well defined. If it's used a great deal, somebody might lay, gravel on the path. And later, as it's used more and more, maybe some people would put cement on the gravel. So soon it becomes the path that is always taken. That path in step with God's Spirit. The path of constant surrender and full reliance on Jesus. And the result is all those things in our mind that we struggle with, the shame, the fears, the doubts, the wrong attitudes and habits, they stop to have it. They don't have any power over us. Jennie Allen, in her book Get Out of Your Head, recounts when an astronaut, a guy called Shane Kimbrough, explained to her what it was really like being in space for months at a time. He talks about the wonder of looking out and seeing Earth in all her beauty and all her glory, and seeing the moon and the stars. And he talked about working 12-hour days, collecting samples, conducting experiments, taking walks in space. And at night, he would retire to sleeping quarters the size of a telephone booth and would strap himself to his bed lest he float around all night. And not only is it hard on the astronaut's body being in space, apparently astronauts lose about 1% of their bone mass per month spent in space. But it's also hard on their minds. They're separated from family and friends and normal earthly routines for days, sometimes months at a time. They know that life is going on without them back home. They can feel isolated. And he said sometimes emotions can run dark. And he talked about a time when instead of going home, he was told he was going to be delayed 2 months. And Sean was ready to go home. His wife and children were ready for him to go home. The entire crew ached to get home, yet they would not be going home. And Jennie asked him, "How in the world did you cope?" And she said, "I never forgot his answer." He said, "I trusted my training." He said, I spent years learning how to be a successful astronaut. I believed mission control had my best interest at heart. I believed God's faithful provision. I called my wife and I got busy finishing my task. It's great. It's not easy, is it, to stop believing the lies in our head? But we can't just do nothing and live under their control. We train. We spend time in God's presence. We submit our thoughts to Jesus. We read our Bibles. We grow in faith. We invest in great and healthy relationships. We choose well, daily, moment by moment. We train our minds. We trust our training. We focus on Jesus. Can I confess something today? I have always been afraid of the dark. My dad was a great one for telling ghost stories, but God, I still to this day struggle sleeping alone in the dark. Fortunately, I have a big furnace sleeping next to me these days. But when the darkness comes, when the lights go out and your head hits that pillow, sometimes the dark thoughts can come. Those spirals, they start coming and we go down. Is God real? What does the future hold? Will I be okay? Did I mess up today? Did I let God down today? So in the darkness, I have to make a choice. And I have to choose well. So I choose to talk to God instead of doubting him. I choose to think on and be grateful for all that he's done for me. I choose to obey and trust him no matter how I feel. I plan in my head how I can serve him tomorrow. And that downward spiral is reversed. Psalm 3:3 says that God is the lifter of my head. I love that. I saw it with a fresh insight this week, and it's been with me all week. God is the lifter of our heads. So is your head down at the moment? Are you living life looking at your shoes? Are you struggling with doubt, with fear, with worries? Are you struggling with disappointment and discouragement? Are you tired, bone tired? Are you grieving, lonely, or overwhelmed? Are the voices in your head threatening to destroy you? I want to encourage you, come back to Jesus. He's not some scolding head teacher that you have to fear. Look into his face. Let his unconditional love wrap itself around you. Rest in his assurance of love and protection. Know that the plans he has for you are good for you, to prosper you, to give you a future. Feel his heartbeat within you. He lives in you. His is the voice you only need to hear. Guys, he is the lifter of your head. Amen. Well, I hope that's helped and blessed you. It's been a great series, I think really apt for this sort of season that all of us are in. And who knows what we'll be doing next, but hey, God's in control and he's with us. So bless you guys. I love you loads and see you soon on Zoom. Bye.